Welcome to Matchback Systems podcast. I'm Heather Pearl. It's a pleasure to introduce our guest today, Mr. Mark Bartmann from Kuehne Nagel. Mark is Senior Director, Seafreight Drayage Solutions for North America. A warm welcome and thanks very much for joining us, Mark.
Oh, thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Wie geht's?
Sehr gut, danke.
So let's start with your role at Kuehne Nagel. What does your job entail? What activities are you responsible for?
Yeah, I started many years ago in the sea freight industry for Schenker, went to Geologistics, ended up with Kuehne Nagel many years ago here in the United States, and was always in the sea freight senior management side. And eventually Kuehne Nagel thought that they need somebody to run the FCL domestic business on the trucking side. And in 2014, we decided that I will take over at that time the intermodal group for Kuehne Nagel North America. At that time, we were a fairly small group with 10 to 12 people. In the meantime, I have close to 60 people doing dispatch for FCL within North America. My US team is a little bit over 50 people. In Canada, we have 15, Mexico, another 10 to 15 people, which produce service and quality for our customer for last and first mile logistics. That means on our side, we have separated this out of the operating sea freight branches and have a centralized setup, which receives the orders from our branches in Canada and the United States to deliver or pick up cargo for our customers and assure that we have a seamless process and control the business and the service for our customers.
Okay, so you're at the sharp end of the business where rubber literally hits the road, and I imagine that IT plays a growing role in your work. So let's talk technology for a second. With more process automation and data capabilities as examples, how is tech helping the logistics sector?
I think nowadays, without technology, we can't do anything. Technology is advancing so quickly, and if we do not find a way to produce better quality, better visibility to our BCOs, to our customers, but also to our vendors and partners in the motor carrier industry, then we will fail. If we cannot assure that the cost increases will be controlled through productivity increases and cost decreases on our side, then we will fail. We see this nowadays in every single angle that investment and venture capital into the logistics world for technology has been just pouring in left and right in 2018, and that obviously had to do with the challenges seen in the market. There is a huge potential to have this market, which is a multi-billion-dollar market just on domestic freight as well as on port rail drayage, to receive some benefit and mid to long-term gains through technology. It's an absolute must. We at Kuehne Nagel looking at a new platform as well, where we have decided which platform we will use, and we're working on final agreements, development, and then hopefully very soon deployment of our new system. The challenge what I see at the moment is that there are too many on the market. Everybody wants to go in the market, and you do not even know who is good or bad. Everybody goes in a similar direction, and this is something what I see as a challenge, and hopefully the next 2 to 3 years, there will be an established technology crowd which will lead that process in this industry, and the ones which are not as capable potentially fall off. And we work with a smaller group of companies, and right now it's just a little bit overwhelming in regards to the new startups and new ideas, which are all great, but it's a little bit overwhelming in what comes into the market and who do you choose and who do you not choose.
Okay, so digitization is changing the way that you do business.
Absolutely. We see it on a daily basis. We all drive an Uber. We all order from Amazon or any other e-commerce website. It is very simple. It is driven towards the customer, and the same thing has to happen in our industry. If we cannot produce the proper information for our customers while somebody else can, even with a little bit a higher price, I think that customers will go to somebody who can produce the value and quality information that they're requiring and what they see on a day-to-day basis in their personal life. So the challenge is that many large companies like Kuehne Nagel have so many different items on their platform that it sometimes can be cumbersome if you want to identify an individual solution for a certain product. This is what I see as a challenge for very large organizations to implement and deploy these systems quickly, because it is not like 20, 30 years ago where you buy a system and 20 years later you can still use it. You buy a system and 6 months later it could be already obsolete. So this is something what I see as a big challenge right now for large and very large organization to make the decision to buy the software or create a software and then deploy it in a very, very quick timeline.
Okay. So Kuehne Nagel has a platform that provides online quotes and bookings. What's been the impact of digital tools like these for you and your customers?
I think we have started with our air freight global quote system, where you can, with one click, you can go on a door-to-door basis anywhere in the world. With our air freight quote system, we have now advanced, and this is already a few months, I think over a year, with our LCL FreightNet, where you can receive a quote for any LCL shipment, any place in the world to any place in the world. And with one click, you get one number, you get a transit time. We have now started with an FCL tool as well, where we guarantee our transit time. We guarantee a price for FCL containers from door to door, anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world. And this is something nobody else has done yet. The challenge here is that these solutions are not targeted to our large customer base, because the cost of those are usually a little bit inflated to protect ourselves as well on the FCL side, not on the air freight, not on the LCL side. So this is why that FCL product is still in the baby steps, where we are working internally right now with all global leaders to fine-tune our transit time, to fine-tune our rates, to make this a little bit more attractive for our customers.
Okay. And another thing that you've done for customers recently is launched the KN Pledge, which among other things includes guaranteed lead times for shippers. So, Mark, can you tell us more about this service?
Yes, so KN Pledge is something a freight forwarder or steamship line has never done in the market. This is something where we guaranteed lead time for all delivery combinations. With KN Pledge, customers will not have to worry about the arrival of their shipment. Kuehne Nagel will guarantee the lead time for all delivery combinations, meaning any point to any point in the world, we have a transit time matrix for every single point. It's millions of connection points, and we assure that within that lead time, we will deliver the cargo or earlier. And if we do not deliver within that time, it's 100% money back guarantee. In addition to that, same like with air freight as well as with LCL, it's an instant pricing. customer will be able to receive instant pricing, book the shipment, as well as track it through MyKN or on kuehnenagel.com pledge. So it's a very interesting product. It has some additional features as well. It has extended cargo liability, where we put some additional insurance through our in-house insurance broker, Nacora, on top of that. This is included into the rate, as well as we guarantee that the travel of the container will be carbon neutral. We buy carbon points from certain companies which produce that value to us, and we will assure that for every single pledge booking, we buy enough carbon neutrality to assure that this shipment has no impact for our environment.
So the pledge includes a carbon offset element for customers. Now, do you see companies becoming more proactive about sustainability to mitigate the impact of their own operations or the companies that they work with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think especially in the United States, and I live here now for 20 years, we have overslept the path of sustainability. But now the new generation, I see this with my kids, they start with all of these things because the internet shows them how bad it is in the world, how many challenges we create by not being sustainable, by just doing whatever we want, and they learn it in the schools now too. So I'm very happy that finally also in the United States, sustainability programs are coming out in the last few years, and Kuehne Nagel is absolutely on the forefront. I, for example, in my small branch, and we roll this also out over the whole world, we have our own environmental committee with initiatives from our employees, how to save additional items, if this is paper, plastic, or whatever it could be within an office environment. So we constantly try to do something better for the world, and we have to. I calculated at one time how much gallons of fuel just my department blows out, and it is a quarter million gallon per day.
Wow.
That's the usage in average per day what the trucks use to produce the delivery and pickup for our cargo. 250,000 gallons, over 1 million gallons per week, and we need to do something to help this planet to go in the right direction.
Yeah, well, it's one of the key principles of matchback systems is to champion sustainability. So that's great.
That is correct. And that's obviously as well why Kuehne Nagel joined Matchback, to assure that we have less of these 250,000 per day in gallons, that we can reduce it wherever we can.
Right. Perfect. Now, let's talk about sea freight drayage in light of recent history. So shipping activity was intense last year. We had a perfect storm of conditions that led to a capacity crunch and port congestion and higher transport costs, and it highlighted inefficiencies with trucking and port operations. So from your perspective, what are the key problem areas and what can be done to solve them?
I think one of the key problem areas is knowledge from all of us, and that starts with the BCOs, goes to the terminal providers, the PMA, the steamship lines, the terminal operators everywhere. Knowledge in how can we work better together, and then obviously technology plays a really big part. The biggest challenge what we had last year was obviously the implementation of ELD, as well as the ignorance of certain customers which just didn't want to understand the changes in the industry. This goes further into this year, where we have a little dip right now, and we come to this in a second. Everybody or many people think this is a cyclical issue. We told you it's a cyclical issue. It happens every 3, 6, 12 months, every 3 years. It will bounce back. There's no problem. Not this time. This is a systemic issue. This is an issue where costs went up drastically in 2018 because of a driver shortage. The driver shortage was different in certain areas. It was produced primarily through not implementing the law, but actually assuring that the law is done the right way with implementing of the electronic logging devices and therefore the reduced HOS, the hours of services. In many markets, this has reduced a significant challenge with driver availability. For example, when you look in the Southeast, you go Charleston, Savannah, in order to drive in an urban center, you go to Charlotte, you go to Greer, Spartanburg, you go southern Tennessee, you go to Atlanta, past Atlanta to Alabama, you go down to Florida. It's a 200-mile one-way. In the past, I had drivers, they drove to Tennessee, 400 plus miles, and I drove the same time back. 850 miles was nothing unusual for some drivers to do this. Now we see as an average, a good average without traffic is around 575 miles. There you see already it's a massive reduction on driving availability, driving mile availability, and therefore reducing the amount of drivers. In addition to that, these long-haul drivers suddenly, they don't want to go in the port anymore. They need to be in the road. They don't want to sit in the port an hour, 2, 3 until they get their container, and then they potentially sit in the middle of the road somewhere because they have to stop after 11-hour official driving time. So now we have pre-pull drivers in Charleston and Savannah. That further reduced the availability of drivers. And I can tell you a story about every single port. I just picked one right now. So this is our biggest challenge, that now everybody got higher salaries, they got higher rates, the drivers get more money. Every single company owner I speak to, they're like a motor carrier company owner, they need to give them either benefits, healthcare, they pay them part of their fuel, they give them referral bonuses, they give them commission or retention bonuses or whatever. So all this builds up in increasing their cost. So now I just read the cost stays, but in the FTL market in the last few months, the rates dropped because we have a challenge with the tariffs from Mr. Trump's, which were announced on May 10th, where we see a massive dip right now, which has produced a challenge primarily in the domestic FTL market, as well as in the modal, but primarily in the FTL market, where you have a short-term oversupply of drivers. This has reduced the actual revenue, what they can get on a per load basis for certain lanes, but the cost remained the same. So who's paying for all of this? Yeah, people have a tendency not to understand what the cost is for a driver, what the cost is for a truck, what the challenges are. And we as Kuehne Nagel, we are very close to our motor carriers and constantly try to understand within the market, not only the cost, the logic of the port, understanding the port operator and the steamship lines, but also the legal environment, which has changed certain areas. When you look into California, for example, we just had a LARA bill, Senate Bill 1402, which gives a challenge for BCOs, which work together with companies which have a lawsuit or a challenge with the DSLE, which is the Department of Safety and Labor Standards. If you're on the list of DSLE and you don't know, and after 90 days you have not removed yourself from working with a certain trucking company, you're personally as well as a company liable and responsible in a lawsuit against a certain motor carrier. And these lawsuits get really expensive. I've seen one lawsuit with a trucker with over 100 trucks, $4.5 million settlement. You can imagine if there's a Target, a Walmart, or a Kuehne Nagel in there with billions of dollars of revenue companies, how big these lawsuits can get. And this is just one example of the challenges we have in multiple states, but obviously California is always one of the first. New Jersey, New York is usually the one which is following California. So we have had massive challenges last year, and customers had massive additional costs. And everybody says the only winner was the trucking companies. But we see this now in the beginning of this year. Many have to pay for the increases they had to give to their drivers last year, but certain elements give a challenge to the trucking companies to really increase their prices or hold high prices in the first and second quarter of 2019. And this has brought many companies, especially the small and medium-sized ones, to just sell their business to big corporations like Universal, Road One, IMC Corporation, and then obviously you have the Werners, the Avery, and these companies integrate or buy one company after another, and the small and medium-sized company, primarily individual terminal owners, they will leave and move on.
Right.
And usually move on means they buy a boat and go sailing.
So these are all challenges that you've been facing in the last 6 months to a year, and now we're approaching peak shipping season. So how do you think it will compare to last year? Have things changed? Is there anything keeping you awake at night? How do you think it's going to go?
So I'm 20 years now in the United States, and especially in the last 10, 12 years, a strong focus also from Kuehne Nagel on Trans-Pacific eastbound, which is the largest market for the United States. Kuehne Nagel's strongest markets on the percentage is transatlantic westbound. So we are strong in every market, but now Trans-Pacific is obviously the most interesting thing for everyone. In the last 3 years, I have never seen market changes so drastically and against the normal environment of buying season, peak season, which was very structured. The last 2 years, it's all out of balance. And especially 2018 into 2019, it has a lot to do with the tariffs which were announced to Asia and primarily about China. So first we have had the super peak last year, where a lot of companies tried to get their cargo in before the proposed tariffs, which were for January 1st, 2019. So we had a massive super peak. I've never seen something like this. It was absolutely crazy what we had in LA, and then obviously it swapped over to the main inland points, Memphis, Atlanta, and primarily Chicago, where I was second week in January 2019. I was in Chicago. I was at the Global 4 UP. I spoke to the terminal manager because they were holding our container hostages. He said, I have no chassis. So I went to DCLI. They said, oh, we have enough chassis. So I went to the trucker next door. I'm not naming that name. And then they had 750 loaded container on their yard. And I'm like, how many drivers do you have? He told me 53. Can you imagine how long it takes to deliver those? My point is, everybody ordered so much that the DCs couldn't handle it. The system couldn't handle it. And then nobody wants to keep them at the port or the rail because they pay demurrage, so everybody pulls them out because they have special diesels with the steamship lines for the chassis, and the cost is minimal if you have a good per diem contract with your steamship line. But eventually chassis running out, and it's not the IEP's fault. It's not DCLI, Flexi, Trek, or NACPAC's fault or the pools. It's the BCO's challenge because they have ordered too much and they couldn't produce the volume what they ordered. And again, it's bike fails also Mr. Trump announcing these tariffs. Now we had exactly the same challenge for May 10th, where we had these tariffs very quickly implemented. Now we had exactly the opposite direction. Many of our customers were waiting pattern. The warehouses inventories are still fairly full because we ordered so much before January 1st. So they don't order. That means that whole peak season environment is completely going in a different direction. What we see now, because eventually we know now the tariffs are in place, it's not flip-flopping to 0 or to 10% again. Now they have to order. Back to school has to be here already. And now all the holidays are starting. We see a massive influx of additional cargo because and that's what I said this already on May 10th to my boss, that we will have July latest end of July, we see a massive influx, but we see it now already, middle of July. And for inland points, Chicago, Memphis, Atlanta, the big ones, as well as for the East Coast. We see this more coming beginning of August because it takes a couple of weeks more, obviously, to come to these points. It is coming now. It is coming hard. And we're going to see a super peak in the next few months, as similar to what we have seen October to almost January last year into this year.
Last year.
That's our opinion and the data, what we're seeing.
But do you think that any lessons have been learned from last year, or do you think it will lead to the similar disruption this year?
I would refer this question to Mr. Trump.
Okay. Okay. All right. Wow. So, there's another issue on the horizon as well, which could impact this season, and that's IMO 2020. So I'm keen to get your opinion on that. So it's raised concerns about service disruption and uncertainty over pricing. What are your thoughts about the potential impact?
First, the most important thing, which we all need to think about, environment, sustainability. Yeah, there's no cost. Yeah, the cost is a cost. We all have to pay a few pennies more to have a green planet going tomorrow. If we don't work all together to make this better, we have a challenge. And the ocean vessels are the biggest polluter of this. And to do IMO 2020 is 20 years overdue. This is my opinion, first and foremost. The challenge, what I see is that, and I'm not the sea freight guy anymore, but the challenge, what I see is that there's not enough capability to put the scrubbers in. It takes a week to put them into a vessel, and there's not enough factories to put enough scrubbers or refurbish enough vessels in a short period of time. So there will be challenges. There will be a challenge in fuel supply. Today we hear from the refineries, no problem, we can do it, but I'm not sure if somebody looked at how much fuel, or it's similar to diesel fuel, then will be used going forward from these boats. We're not talking gallons, we're talking tons and tons and tons of bunker fuel.
Yeah.
So if you look at the bunker formula for IMO 2020, for every single one of the 8 big steamship lines, and I talk about the 4 European and 4 Asians, the big ones, every single one is different. Even within an alliance is different. I don't think that even the steamship line know and feel the impact. And I feel that everyone will try to make a little bit money off that. And rightfully so, looking at the red numbers they have produced for many years. On the trucking side, I don't know what's going to happen, because this is equivalent to diesel. What will happen with the diesel fuel? We are fortunate in the United States. We are an exporting country of gas. And therefore, maybe our impact is a little bit less, but I can see a global impact on diesel fuel on the domestic side for trucking, because now we're competing against ocean vessels. This is what I think on the domestic side could have an impact. As I told you, only I blow out a quarter million gallon per day. And I'm just one of 3,500 companies. Obviously, I'm one of the bigger ones, but then you can call C.H. Robinson, which are on the domestic side 12, 13 times bigger than Kuehne Nagel, how much gallons they blow out, how much the impact is of all trucks within the United States on a daily basis. It's an absolute massive number, which we cannot even imagine how big this is.
No.
There will be an impact, there will be a cost impact, and I can see certain challenges in supply. And then just imagine, we have a hurricane in Houston again, one of the refinery goes out. We have an earthquake in Los Angeles, what we just had. 2, 3 refineries go out. What happens then?
Yeah. Oh, Mark. It's a lot going on. What we need to do is have a follow-up session next year. And
Absolutely.
Review how everything went.
Yeah, I don't want to be Nostradamus because I have seen that I fail many times and have done the wrong prediction, but we have done many times the right prediction. This is why Kuehne Nagel is in business for 127 years and in the United States for 52 or 53 years. And we would like to be in business for a few more years. So we want to bring always good service, quality, as well as an honest business environment to our customers.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's been great talking with you, Mark. It's so interesting. Your opinions are just so revealing, and I'm sure they're going to be interesting to our audience. So thanks very much for sharing your views. It's been great. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. It was great.